For 2 decades, my dad called me his biggest regret and chose my brother over me every time. Then, he showed up begging after I made it big. Hey Reddit, buckle up because this one's a long time coming. For 20 years straight, my father made it crystal clear I was the mistake he never wanted, while my brother was the golden child who could literally do no wrong. Then karma came knocking, and suddenly I'm the favorite son. Here's how it all went down. I'm 28 male, the oldest of 2 brothers. My younger brother Tyler, 25 male, has been the apple of our dad's eye since the literal day he was born. Me? I was the accident that derailed dad's entire future and ruined everything he'd been working toward. He told me this directly, multiple times. Starting when I was about 8 years old, my parents got pregnant with me when they were both 19. Dad was supposed to go to college on a full baseball scholarship to a Division II school in Ohio, had serious dreams of making it to the minor leagues, maybe even the majors if things went his way. Then, Mom got pregnant with me, and suddenly Dad's entire carefully planned future evaporated like morning fog on a summer day. He dropped out of community college where he'd been taking general education courses before the scholarship was set to start that fall. Got a job at a manufacturing plant making automotive parts. Worked his way up to shift supervisor over the years, but it was never what he wanted. And he made absolutely sure I knew that every single day of my childhood. The plant work was brutal. 12-hour shifts in a loud factory where the temperature hit 90 degrees in summer. Dad would come home exhausted, smelling like metal shavings and machine oil, his hands permanently stained with grease that never quite washed out. He'd sit in his recliner with this look on his face. Not quite anger, not quite sadness, just this hollow resignation that his life had taken a wrong turn he couldn't reverse. My earliest memory of Dad is him yelling at Mom about how their lives would be different if they'd been more careful. I was maybe 5 years old, playing with toy cars on the living room floor while they fought in the kitchen. Didn't understand what they were arguing about at the time, but I knew somehow it involved me. The way Mom would glance at me with guilt in her eyes. The way Dad's voice would drop when he noticed I was listening. The resentment wasn't subtle either. Dad would look at me sometimes with this expression like he was doing mental math in his head, calculating all the things he could have been doing if I didn't exist. Baseball games he could have played in front of scouts. Cities he could have lived in. Money he could have saved instead of spending on diapers and daycare and all the expensive things babies need. When I was 7, Tyler was born. That's when everything suddenly changed. See, by then Dad had adjusted to his life. He'd accepted that he wasn't going to be a professional athlete. He'd settled into his job at the plant and worked his way up to a position with better pay. He and Mom had been married for 7 years and had actually planned Tyler's arrival. They'd saved money, prepared the house, got excited about having another baby. This time around, Dad was actually ready to be a father. The difference in how he treated us was night and day. Tyler's baby photos are professional studio shots in matching outfits with Mom and Dad beaming at the camera like they'd won the lottery. Mine are blurry Polaroids where you can barely see my face because Mom was still learning how to use the camera and nobody cared enough to retake them. Tyler's baby book is meticulously filled out with first words, first steps, first everything documented like he was some kind of scientific experiment. Mine has my name and birth date filled in, then empty pages for the rest. When Tyler was old enough to walk, Dad started teaching him baseball in the backyard. Would spend hours out there every evening and weekend showing him how to grip a bat properly, how to throw a fastball with the right wrist snap, proper batting stance at the plate. I'd watch from my bedroom window, wondering why Dad never wanted to teach me those things when I'd asked years earlier. One time when I was about 10, I asked if I could join them for batting practice. Dad looked at me like I'd suggested something completely ridiculous and said Tyler was still learning the basics. Maybe when he got better and needed more challenging pitching, I could throw to him for practice. Translation: you're not worth teaching, but you can be useful as equipment when we need you. That became the pattern for pretty much everything. Tyler got attention, instruction, encouragement, one-on-one time. I got assigned chores and told to stay out of the way. School events really highlighted the stark difference in treatment. When Tyler had kindergarten graduation, which, let's be honest, isn't really a graduation, it's just kids walking across a gym, Dad took the afternoon off work, showed up with a video camera, and recorded the entire ceremony. He was right up front, waving and giving Tyler thumbs up, staying after to talk with the teachers about Tyler's incredible progress in learning his ABCs. When I graduated middle school with honors, actual academic achievement, not just finishing kindergarten, Dad said he couldn't get off work and didn't even ask how it went when he got home that night. Just walked in, grabbed dinner, and asked Tyler about his baseball practice. I could have walked across that stage naked, and Dad wouldn't have known because he wasn't there. Tyler's first little league game? Dad was there an hour early to help set up the field and drag the bases. Stayed after to talk with coaches about Tyler's natural talent and advanced baseball IQ, even though Tyler had struck out twice. Bought ice cream on the way home to celebrate, even though Tyler's team lost 7-2. The whole evening was about Tyler being part of a team and learning sportsmanship and all that parent stuff. My first high school football game where I actually played in the fourth quarter as a backup linebacker, Dad didn't come. Said he was tired from work, and football wasn't really his sport anyway. Never mind that I'd been excited all week about finally getting on the field. Never mind that I'd specifically asked him to be there. He was tired and football wasn't baseball, so it didn't matter. The excuses were always the same too. He was tired from work. He had things to do around the house. Football wasn't as interesting as baseball. Band concerts were too long. Academic competitions were boring. But baseball games for Tyler? Suddenly Dad had endless energy and interest. Suddenly he could take time off work. Suddenly sitting on metal bleachers for 3 hours was no problem at all. Mom tried to balance things out, bless her heart. She was working full-time as a dental assistant and didn't have enough hours in the day to make up for Dad's obvious favoritism. She'd come to some of my stuff when she could, always looking exhausted and guilty that Dad wasn't there. She'd apologize quietly, make excuses for him, promise he'd make the next one. He never did. "Your father loves you," she'd say every single time. "He just shows it differently." That's not showing love differently. That's not showing love at all. The verbal stuff got progressively worse as I got older and could actually understand what he was saying. Around 12 years old, Dad started making these comments about how I needed to justify my existence by being useful to the family. How Tyler was the son he'd actually wanted and planned for, while I was just the consequence of bad timing and worse decisions. One night at dinner when I was 13, I mentioned getting a B+ on a really difficult algebra test. Had studied for hours. The class average was a C-, and I was genuinely proud of pulling a B+. Dad's response was to turn to 8-year-old Tyler and say, "See how your brother settles for good enough? You'll do better than that. You'll aim for perfection." Tyler was 8, hadn't even taken an algebra test, probably didn't even know what algebra was. But Dad still used my actual accomplishment as a teaching moment for why Tyler should exceed me in every possible way. When I made the varsity football team sophomore year as a backup linebacker, which was actually impressive because sophomores rarely made varsity, Dad's reaction was to ask if they were short on players that year. Like the only way I could have made the team was if nobody else wanted to play. When Tyler made the traveling baseball team in 6th grade, which was basically just kids whose parents could afford the fees, Dad threw him a whole party and invited all the neighbors. The message was clear and absolutely consistent. Tyler's achievements mattered and deserved celebration. Mine were footnotes at best, embarrassments at worst. I dealt with it the way a lot of ignored kids do. I stopped trying to get Dad's attention and focused on becoming completely self-sufficient. Got my first real job at 15 washing dishes at a diner called Rosie's about 2 miles from our house. Saved every single penny I earned. Started planning my exit strategy from that house the literal second I turned 18. The job at Rosie's was tough work. Showed up at 5 p.m., worked until closing around midnight, washing hundreds of dishes in scalding hot water that turned my hands red and wrinkled. My fingers would be pruned by the time I got home. But I didn't complain because that money was my ticket out. Dad seemed actually relieved when I started working. One less expense he had to cover. Told me since I was earning money now, I should start contributing to household expenses. Started charging me $200 a month for rent as soon as I turned 16 and got my driver's license. Let me repeat that. My father charged his 16-year-old son rent to live in his own childhood home. Tyler never paid rent. Not when he turned 16. Not when he turned 18. Not when he was still living at home at 23 years old. But I had to contribute starting at 16 because apparently my existence was such a burden that I needed to start paying them back for the privilege of raising me. The financial double standard was absolutely constant. When my car broke down junior year, this beat-up Honda Civic I'd bought for $900 from a coworker's cousin, Dad said I'd have to figure it out myself since I had a job and should learn about car repairs. I ended up spending $300 I'd saved for college application fees to get the alternator replaced. When Tyler wanted a car for his 16th birthday, Dad co-signed a loan for a nearly new Ford Focus and helped make the monthly payments for the first year until Tyler got established. Tyler got established by totaling that Ford Focus 6 months later, driving too fast in the rain. Dad's reaction? Accidents happen. Let's get you something else. They bought him another car. College was the exact same story, just with bigger numbers that made the inequality even more obvious. I got into a decent state school with some scholarship money covering about half tuition, but I still needed substantial help with room and board and books and all the other expenses that add up when you're trying to survive as a college student. Asked Dad if he could help with anything, even just a couple $1,000s to get me started. His response? I was 18 now and needed to learn financial responsibility. Said taking out loans would teach me the value of money and build character. Said he'd done me a favor by not helping because now I'd appreciate my education more. The mental gymnastics were impressive, so I took out student loans. Lots of them. Federal loans, private loans, whatever I could qualify for. Took out loans and worked 2 jobs simultaneously to cover living expenses that the loans didn't touch. Worked overnight shifts at a warehouse from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. loading trucks and moving pallets. Then, I'd go to morning classes running on pure adrenaline and exhaustion. Weekend shifts at a coffee shop from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. meant I basically never had a day off. Functioned on 4 hours of sleep most days, sometimes less. My roommate freshman year thought I was a ghost, because I was never there when he was awake. I'd come back to the dorm at 8 a.m., sleep until noon, go to afternoon classes, study until my shift started, then do it all over again. The bags under my eyes were so dark, people asked if I was sick. Ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches for probably 70% of my meals. Learned to make ramen interesting by adding whatever cheap vegetables were on sale. Frozen peas, canned corn, whatever. Peanut butter sandwiches on the cheapest white bread imaginable became my primary source of protein. My diet was approximately 60% carbs, 30% cheap protein, and 10% whatever vitamins I could get from the occasional banana. Wore the same 6 outfits over and over because I couldn't afford new clothes. Same 2 pairs of jeans alternating all week. Same 4 t-shirts in rotation. 1 decent shirt for presentations. My shoes literally had holes in the soles that I covered with duct tape because buying new ones meant choosing between shoes and textbooks. Watched other students go out on weekends, take spring break trips, join clubs and organizations. I couldn't afford any of it. Couldn't afford the dues, couldn't afford the time away from work, couldn't afford to be a normal college student doing normal college things. Tyler got into the same state school 3 years later with significantly worse grades and 0 scholarship money. His GPA was barely above the minimum admission requirement. His SAT scores were mediocre at best. He'd coasted through high school on Dad's constant excuses and Mom's enabling, never really applying himself to anything except baseball. Dad paid for everything without hesitation or conditions. Full tuition, every penny. Room and board in the newer dorms with air conditioning and private bathrooms. The premium meal plan with unlimited swipes. All his textbooks purchased new from the campus bookstore instead of used or rented. Even gave him $500 a month in spending money for going out with friends, buying whatever he wanted, living the actual college experience. Tyler joined a fraternity freshman year, $4,000 in dues that Dad paid without blinking. Went on spring break trips to Cancun and Miami that cost thousands more. Had a car on campus sophomore year, something most students couldn't afford. While I'd been eating ramen and working overnight, Tyler was living the college life that exists in movies and TV shows. When I asked why Tyler got a free ride while I had to take out $30,000 in loans that I'd be paying off for the next decade, Dad had his justification ready. Said Tyler had more potential, and it was worth investing in his future since he'd likely go on to do great things. Said I was already established with my engineering program and work history, so I didn't need help anymore. Said the loans would make me appreciate my degree more when I finally paid them off. Established. Potential. Appreciation. All these words that basically meant, Tyler is worth spending money on and you're not. I was a 21-year-old college student eating peanut butter sandwiches twice a day while working overnight shifts and going to classes exhausted. Tyler was 21 later and attending fraternity parties 3 nights a week with Dad's money. That was Dad's definition of us being in different positions that justified the completely unequal treatment. That's when I realized Dad wasn't ever going to see me as anything other than the mistake that derailed his life. Nothing I accomplished would matter, because in his eyes, I wasn't supposed to exist in the first place. I was a living reminder of everything he'd given up. So I stopped expecting anything from him. Stopped calling home except when Mom answered the phone. Stopped coming back for holidays unless Mom specifically asked, and even then I'd make excuses. Built a life that had absolutely nothing to do with Dad's approval, because I was never going to get it anyway. I graduated college with a degree in mechanical engineering and a job offer already lined up before my final semester even ended. Got hired by a reputable manufacturing company in another state designing production equipment and automation systems for automotive assembly lines. The starting salary was decent. Nothing spectacular, but enough to finally feel like I could breathe financially for the first time in years. Packed up my beat-up Honda Civic with everything I owned, which fit in the car pretty easily since I didn't own much beyond clothes, a laptop, some engineering textbooks, and basic kitchen supplies, and moved 8 hours away without any fanfare. Barely even said goodbye beyond a quick text to Mom, letting her know I'd arrived safely. Started building the life I actually wanted, instead of trying to fit into the one Dad had decided I wasn't worthy of being part of. The job was good. Nothing glamorous, but solid pay around $45,000 to start with decent benefits and clear room for advancement if I worked hard. I could afford my own apartment without needing roommates to split rent. Could buy groceries and eat real meals instead of surviving on ramen and peanut butter. Could start making actual payments on those student loans instead of just watching the interest accumulate month after month while I struggled. Meanwhile, Tyler bounced around for several years after college, like a pinball in a machine. Got a business degree, but couldn't hold down a job for more than 6 months at a time. Tried selling insurance, hated it within 3 months and quit. Tried real estate, attended one training class and decided it wasn't for him. Worked at a car dealership selling sedans, got fired after 6 months for missing too many days and showing up late constantly. Every single failed job, Dad had ready-made excuses. The boss was unreasonable and didn't appreciate Tyler's potential. The insurance industry was struggling because of market conditions. Real estate required too much self-motivation, and Tyler needed more structure. The car dealership had impossible sales quotas that nobody could meet. Always someone else's fault. Always external circumstances. Never Tyler's responsibility. But when I changed jobs after 2 years to get a better position with more pay and better projects, Dad said I was being flaky and needed to learn commitment. Said job hopping looked bad on a resume. Said employers wanted loyalty. This from the same man who made excuses for Tyler quitting 3 different jobs in 18 months. By the time I was 25, I'd gotten recruited to a major aerospace company based in the Southwest. Good salary, great benefits, interesting work on projects that actually mattered. Started working on military contracts, defense systems, satellite components. Bought my first house. Small 2-bedroom starter home. But it was mine. No roommates, no landlord, just my name on the deed. Around the same time, Tyler moved back in with our parents after his girlfriend kicked him out of her apartment for not paying rent. He was 22 years old, unemployed for the 3rd time in as many years, and crashing in his old childhood bedroom playing video games 18 hours a day, while Dad kept insisting he was between opportunities and figuring out his path. I visited Mom for her birthday that year. First time I'd been home in almost 18 months because I'd been actively avoiding going back. Walked in and found Tyler on the couch in the same sweatpants he'd probably been wearing for 4 days, playing video games at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Asked what he was up to, and he said he was networking online and exploring entrepreneurial opportunities. He was playing Call of Duty with a bag of chips on his stomach and hadn't showered in what looked like multiple days based on his hair. Dad came home from work and immediately lit up seeing Tyler like someone had switched on a light bulb. Didn't even acknowledge me for the first 10 full minutes. When he finally said hello, it was just a quick nod before he went right back to asking Tyler about his job search and whether he'd heard back from any applications yet. That night at dinner, Dad went on and on about how proud he was of Tyler for taking his time to find the right opportunity instead of jumping at the first thing available and settling like some people do. Actually looked right at me when he said the settling part. I'd just been promoted to senior engineer, was making more money than Dad had ever earned in his entire career. Owned my own house while Tyler was unemployed and living in his childhood bedroom at 22. But somehow I was the one settling by Dad's logic. That was the last family dinner I attended for 2 full years. Then things started really changing in my favor. I got recruited by a major defense contractor operating out of Virginia. Huge salary bump. Nearly double what I'd been making. Stock options that would vest over 5 years. Company car. Moving expenses paid in full. The kind of job that gets your name mentioned in industry trade publications and conference programs. Started traveling for work constantly, meeting with military brass and government officials about weapon systems contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Attended Pentagon briefings. Reviewed classified specifications. The whole 9 yards. It was intense and stressful, but also incredibly validating to be trusted with that level of responsibility. Didn't tell my parents about any of it. Mom would occasionally hear through friends or distant relatives who'd seen something online and call to congratulate me. But I kept Dad on a strict information diet. He hadn't cared about my successes for the previous 25 years of my life. So why should he suddenly get to hear about them now? Tyler, meanwhile, was still finding himself at 24, had moved back in with our parents for the third time after losing yet another job, was working part-time at a sporting goods store folding t-shirts and restocking shelves, talking constantly about starting a business, flipping cars despite having zero money and zero mechanical knowledge about what made a car valuable. Dad was still making excuses for him like it was his full-time job. Tyler was entrepreneurial, had vision and ambition, just needed the right break to come along. Meanwhile, I was dismissed as the boring corporate engineer who'd chosen a safe, predictable path instead of taking risks and chasing dreams like Tyler allegedly was. The irony was completely lost on Dad that Tyler's biggest risk was betting on parental support lasting forever while contributing absolutely nothing. Then came the phone call that changed absolutely everything. I was 27 years old. Mom called me at work one Thursday afternoon, crying so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. Immediately made me think something terrible had happened. Turned out Dad had suffered a serious heart attack at the manufacturing plant. Collapsed on the factory floor during his shift. Not fatal, but serious enough to require emergency surgery and months of recovery afterward. I drove home that weekend, 8 hours straight through. Dad was still in the hospital recovering from the emergency procedure. Went to see him in the cardiac unit. He looked smaller than I remembered. Older. Tired. All that anger and resentment he'd carried around for decades had physically worn him down. He didn't apologize for anything. Didn't acknowledge the years of blatant favoritism and emotional cruelty. Just said he was glad I came and asked surface-level questions about my job. Small talk. Weather-level conversation. Like we were distant acquaintances catching up instead of father and son dealing with a life-threatening medical emergency. I kept the visit short and professional. Told Mom I'd help with medical bills if insurance didn't cover everything, then drove back to my life 8 hours away. The heart attack forced Dad into early retirement. Couldn't physically handle the demanding shift supervisor job anymore. His pension and disability payments covered basic living expenses, but their retirement situation was significantly tighter than they'd planned. Mom was still working at the dental office, but they were cutting expenses everywhere they could. Tyler still lived with them rent-free. Still wasn't contributing financially in any meaningful way. Still was pursuing his entrepreneurial dreams, which mostly involved watching business podcasts on YouTube and posting motivational quotes on social media about hustle culture and grinding while working 15 hours a week at the sporting goods store. 6 months after the heart attack, Dad called me directly for the first time in literally years. I almost didn't answer because I saw his name on the caller ID, and my immediate instinct was to decline it. "Hey," he said, voice awkward and uncertain. "How have you been?" "Fine. What do you need?" He stumbled through uncomfortable small talk for about a minute before finally getting to the actual point of the call. They were having serious financial trouble. Medical bills were piling up faster than they could pay them. Mom's hours had been cut at the dental office. Tyler was still looking for a good full-time opportunity. Could I help them out financially? The sheer audacity was absolutely breathtaking. 27 years of being treated like a burden and an unwanted mistake. And now he wanted money from me. "How much are we talking?" I asked. "Well, we're about $15,000 behind on various bills. The house payment is 3 months late, medical bills are probably another $8,000, and the credit cards we used for expenses are maxed out. How much has Tyler contributed to this?" Dead silence on the phone. "He's between jobs right now, you know that. And he's got his own expenses. He's trying to get his car flipping business started. So nothing. Tyler's contributed absolutely nothing to the household. That's not fair. He's in a different position than you are. You've got that big corporate job with the defense contractor. The job I paid for myself with student loans I'm still paying off. The career I built while Tyler got a completely free ride through college and still somehow couldn't figure out how to be a functioning adult." More uncomfortable silence. I just thought, family helps family out in tough times. The phrase actually made me laugh out loud. Actually laugh. Bitter and sharp and humorless. Family helps family. That's rich coming from you. Where was family when I was working 2 jobs to afford textbooks? Where was family when my car died and I had to figure it out completely alone? Where was family at my graduation, my promotion, any single moment in my life that actually mattered? I know I wasn't perfect. You weren't a father, not to me. You made it very clear for my entire childhood and adult life that I was the mistake that ruined your plans. So here's what I'm going to do. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm going to do exactly what you did for me. Figure it out yourself. I hung up before he could respond. Mom called about an hour later, crying harder than she'd cried when Dad had the heart attack. I told her calmly that I'd pay her medical bills directly if she sent me the statements. But I wasn't giving Dad a single penny. She could come stay with me if she wanted to leave him, but I was completely done pretending we were a functional family. She said I was being cruel and heartless. Maybe I was. But I learned cruelty from an absolute expert. The house went into foreclosure proceedings 3 months later. Mom and Dad had to move into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. Tyler moved right along with them because he still had nowhere else to go and absolutely no money to live independently. My career kept climbing steadily upward. Got promoted to program director overseeing multiple major contracts. Was managing a team of 40 engineers working on a $500 million missile defense project. Got written up in industry journals and trade publications. Gave keynote presentations at engineering conferences. Everything Dad could have been proud of if he'd ever actually seen me as worthwhile, instead of as the accident that derailed his baseball dreams. Then came the event that brought absolutely everything to a head. I won a major industry achievement award from the National Defense Industrial Association. Huge deal in the aerospace and defense sector. Came with a formal ceremony at a hotel in Washington, D.C., national recognition in the industry, and a significant cash prize of $50,000. The kind of accomplishment that gets announced in press releases and mentioned in industry publications for months afterward. The day after the public announcement, Dad called my cell phone. I saw his name and almost sent it to voicemail out of habit. "Saw the news about your award," he said, trying to sound casual and proud. "That's really something impressive." "Thanks," I replied flatly. "Your mother and I would love to come to the ceremony. Support you. When is it scheduled for?" The ceremony was in 6 weeks. I hadn't planned on inviting them. Hadn't even told them I'd been nominated months earlier. It's invitation only, small venue, limited capacity. Well, surely you can get your own parents in. We'd love to be there to support you and see you get recognized for your work. That word, support, coming from him felt like an actual physical slap across the face. "Why?" I asked simply. "What do you mean, why? You're my son. I want to see you get recognized for your accomplishments." Where was that energy for the last 27 years of my life? He got immediately defensive, as I knew he would. Started listing times he'd allegedly supported me. Came to some football games when he could get away from work. Helped me move into my first apartment once. Basic bare minimum dad stuff that he somehow thought balanced out decades of systematic emotional neglect and favoritism. "You told me I was a mistake," I said quietly but firmly. Multiple times. Starting when I was 8 years old. "You said Tyler was the son you'd actually wanted and planned for. You paid for his entire life. College, cars, rent, everything, while I worked for every single thing I got. You made it very clear where I stood in this family. I was frustrated back then. I was young and didn't know how to handle it. I didn't mean those things. Yes, you absolutely did. You meant every single word. And now that I've succeeded completely despite you rather than because of you, suddenly you want to be involved in my life? That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk to me about fair? You charged me rent at 16 years old. You refused to help with college expenses. You skipped my graduation. You've missed every important moment of my life because you were too busy worshiping Tyler and making excuses for his failures. And now you want an invitation to my award ceremony? I'm your father. No, a real father shows up for his kids. A real father supports all his children equally. A real father doesn't spend 27 years making one son feel completely worthless while handing the other son everything on a silver platter. You're just the guy whose genetics I happen to share. That's the extent of our relationship. I want to make things right between us. You can't. Some things don't get fixed with an apology. You made your choices consistently for nearly 3 decades. Now you get to live with those choices." I hung up on him. Blocked his number in my phone. Blocked his email address. Didn't invite him to the ceremony. The award ceremony itself was absolutely incredible. My entire engineering team was there celebrating with me. My girlfriend Emily flew in from her job in Boston. Some old college friends I'd stayed close with made the trip to D.C. People who actually cared about me as a person celebrated my success authentically. The people who should have been there by biology weren't, and I honestly didn't miss them at all. After the ceremony during the reception, one of my senior colleagues asked why my parents weren't there for such a major career milestone. I told him simply that we weren't close and left it at that. He looked genuinely confused and said his own father wouldn't have missed something like this for anything in the world. Must be nice to have that kind of father, I thought, but didn't say out loud. I posted exactly one photo from the event on social media. Just me holding the award plaque, smiling genuinely. Didn't mention who wasn't there or make any pointed comments. Didn't need to. Mom commented, So proud of you, sweetheart. No mention of dad whatsoever. Tyler didn't comment at all. Didn't even like the post. 2 weeks after the ceremony, Tyler called my cell phone out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken in over a year at that point. Hey man, congrats on the big award. That's really cool. Thanks, I said carefully. Look, I wanted to talk to you about something kind of serious. Dad's really struggling with what happened between you two. He feels terrible about everything. He should feel terrible. I know he wasn't perfect growing up, but he's still our dad, and he's really not doing well right now. The stress of everything, the financial problems, feeling like he's lost you, it's honestly killing him. And I think you should give him another chance. He genuinely wants to apologize, wants to try to build an actual relationship with you. He's different now. The heart attack changed him. Is he actually different? Or does he just want access to my money and my success now that I have both? Tyler got defensive immediately. Started saying I was being unfair and holding grudges and not understanding how hard things had actually been for Dad all these years. I let him talk himself completely out before responding calmly. Tyler, do you know why Dad treated us so differently our entire childhood? What do you mean? I was the unplanned pregnancy that ruined his baseball scholarship and his entire future. You were the planned son he actually wanted after he'd adjusted to his life. That's why you got absolutely everything while I got nothing. He resented me for existing and ruining his dreams. He never said anything like that to me. Of course he didn't. He said it to me. Multiple times over many years. You were the golden child who could do no wrong. So you never saw any of it. But I lived it every single day. Silence on the phone line. I honestly didn't know it was that bad for you. How could you know? You were too busy being the favorite and getting everything handed to you on a silver platter. More uncomfortable silence. What do you want me to say here? Nothing. I don't want anything from you. Just stop calling me about Dad and his feelings. His emotional state isn't my problem anymore. He made that choice a long time ago. We're still family, though. Family is supposed to be there for you when you need them. Where was family when I actually needed support? Now that I don't need anything from any of you, suddenly everyone wants a relationship? That's not how this works. So you're just going to cut us all off permanently? I didn't cut anyone off. I'm just done pretending we're something we never actually were. You all made your choices over and over for decades. Now you get to live with the natural consequences of those choices. I hung up. Haven't spoken to Tyler since that conversation. Mom and I still talk occasionally on the phone. She's caught in an impossible middle position, which I do feel somewhat bad about, but I'm absolutely not budging on Dad. She understands my position even if she wishes things could be different. She's made her choice to stay with him, and I've made my choice to maintain distance. Last I heard through Mom, Dad and Tyler are still living together in that small apartment. Dad's disability payments barely cover the basics of rent and utilities. Tyler finally got a full-time job working at a call center doing customer service, though he apparently still talks constantly about his business plans and entrepreneurial opportunities that never seem to materialize into anything real. They're struggling financially and emotionally. I'm not struggling at all. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.